Good morning, I'm Michael from Moat Monster Gaming, and if you enjoy the video, please like and subscribe. So today I'm looking at Dungeons and Dragons Adventurer number 15. So comes with apparently dazzling blue dice. I'm not quite sure they dazzle, but there we go, more dice to the mountain of dice. And this is the issue. So looking through, if we go through the contents quickly. So the first piece is on challenge monster rating, so multiple monsters. So the previous issue had how to work out your challenge rating for your monsters when they were individual. Now it talks about how to split them up into groups. We have a piece on traps. So traps part 1, making maps part 1, dice decisions. And then for character creation, we've got a little piece on lifestyles, which I actually thought was quite interesting. Trinkets part 1, trinkets part 2. And only one piece of lore, but it is decently written, the Feywild. And then the adventure is Haunted Tome of the Dragon Slayer Part 2. And it's as good as the first part. It lives up to it. I think it's actually a very good 2-part adventure. And actually not one they could have squeezed into one. So I don't feel like it's dragged out, but we'll come to that at the end. So this first piece here is challenge ratings for multiple... Oh, it's coming apart. Challenge rating for multiple monsters. So turning over leaf. We've got a piece about choosing your foes, and like what your character level is, what the challenge rating is, and how many monsters that there should be. I always find it's sometimes quite difficult to work out multiple monsters just to get the balance right when you're playing with your players. But actually this does break it out very nicely. It is very well written, as always. Moving over, we've got a couple of pages on traps, nothing too exciting, but it does have a nice little bit here about just talking about who laid the trap in the first place. So I did quite like reading that. And then another kind of basic but essential part on making maps. Talks about, I actually really enjoy making maps. I love making the maps. I think it's one of the best parts, sitting there creating your own world. And here it talks about start small and then go bigger and go wider as you detail more and more and more of the surrounding environment. So start with town, start with forest, start with cave, and then move up to what's in the local area, and then eventually onto whole continent. And I think that's really, really good advice when you're doing your maps. A couple of pages on dice decisions. The best bit of information here is don't necessarily let the dice rule all your games. I mean, when we play, we do have a lot of dice rolling behind screens. I admit I fudge them. Sometimes it's more about the story. I like to use the dice, but never at the expense of the story and the player's enjoyment. It should always be about player enjoyment most of all. Now, this piece is quite good. So this is about lifestyles and talking about the lifestyle your characters can lead. I quite like this part of it. So here it talks about your lifestyle choices, but it does go into really decent detail about what it is like to live a wretched lifestyle, a squalid, poor, modest, comfortable, wealthy, and aristocratic. And it does break down that there are advantages. Well, there's not really any advantages over here, but it does basically imply there's still being wealthy isn't all it's cracked up to be, because money isn't everything. And a nice little bit here about how if you've got the skills, having a self-sufficient lifestyle can actually be more improved than some of these. If you can hunt and forage for food, actually you don't have to live in squalor. You can live a happy life. I liked it. It's good. It's good. A couple of pages on trinkets here. I think trinkets always make it interesting. There's not too different to what's in the player's handbook when creating your characters, but it is always a nice list of odd and obscure items that your character can potentially start with that have no magical or no like combat impact or anything, but just make a nice part of the backstory. Over here, a couple of pages on the Feywild. talks about how time passes differently, talks about getting in and out, talks about the Seelie and the Unseelie court. I do like the Feywild. And then finally, over here, we have the second part of the Haunted Tomb of the Dragon Slayer. And it is good. It is good. It has combat, though it's optional. It's got a chance for some decent role play and some decent things thought out with it. But in the quest, so they've previously gone into this mound underneath this big elder tree, and it's filled with this elven crypt of a warrior who kind of took the reward and took the acclaim and the fame for something he didn't necessarily do on his own. And as a result, he got stitched up by his own people, or one of his own people, who she has then since turned into a banshee and is the principal villain. That was all explained in the first part, and the first part was very good. This part here details the final couple of locations. So here they go into the crypt, the penultimate crypt, and they have a chance to chat with the restless spirit. It could lead to combat. It's more likely not to, as long as the players are smart about it, and they end up having a chat with them. And there's a little bit here about Tinterus, because again, after the quest, their players are supposed to forget that it ever happened because of this kind of spell-like curse that's been put on the whole of the old Elven Kingdom. And I do wonder if this is going to play a part. Now, it's been mentioned in multiple quests over the last 15 issues, and they keep forgetting elven things. I wonder if we're leading to a quest that's going to revolve around them retrieving their memories and something happening. Because, as I said, this is the third time we've heard about this kind of memory curse. So it's a chance for some encounters with the fallen warrior. They are a restless spirit, but what they basically want to do is this restless spirit wants to apologise to the now banshee for taking all the glory, and it can actually be resolved without combat, which I quite liked. Here's a picture of the banshee. And then, so the first event is the restless spirit wakens and basically says wants to do an apology, which I quite liked. Realised that if they'd perhaps treated the companions that they were questing with better, they would not have been stitched up into a orc ambush. And then once they've decided, or once they've heard out the restless spirit, even through a bit of combat or through a bit of role play, the banshee returns, and then they have to basically lay the banshee to rest as well, which doesn't have to end in combat. It can be dealt with through some rolling and some role play. I like that. It's a decent alternate way of sorting it out. But there we go. Restless Spirit stat block. And finally, Banshee stat block. Thank you very much for looking. Take care.